Welcome back, everyone. Before we begin, share your thoughts and the lessons you took from this story in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get started. We're no longer equals, Elijah. Our lives don't match anymore. You don't measure up. I never saw it until I witnessed what real success looks like. Those were the cutting words Ariel Jackson hurled at her husband on the night she graduated law school. Then she shoved divorce papers against his chest. The same man who had spent 5 years breaking his back on construction sites to fund her education. She didn't know then that the man she tossed aside would later rise as Atlanta's most admired architect, while the millionaire attorney she chose instead would disappear into disgrace, running from the weight of his own choices. The heavy scent of old beer and greasy onions lingered in Holloway's tavern as Elijah Carter pushed through the door. His work boots tracked dust across the worn floorboards. 10 hours of hauling steel and pouring concrete had left his shoulders aching, and fine gray powder clung to his hair like ash. At 27, he felt older than his age, though his eyes still carried the fire of a man unwilling to give up on a dream. He claimed his usual seat at the far end of the bar, away from the chatter of men in polished shoes and pressed ties. Leon, the bartender, slid him a beer without a word. "Long day, Carter?" "Same as always," Elijah murmured. He pulled a crumpled napkin from his pocket, smoothed it flat, and began sketching with the stub of a pencil. Simple, clean lines that breathed. Windows that welcomed light instead of shutting it out. The tavern's noise carried on, but it should have stopped when Ariel Jackson walked in. She moved through the crowd as though she belonged somewhere brighter. Neon signs caught the honey in her brown hair. Law books hugged her chest like armor. Her blue dress was modest yet expensive, more than he earned in a week, but her scuffed shoes and worn purse betrayed the tight budget of a student. Their eyes met, and something shifted. She crossed the room deliberately. "Is this seat taken?" Her voice was softer than expected, laced with confidence but edged with nerves. "It is now," Elijah replied, surprising himself. Her laugh was music he hadn't realized he'd missed. "I'm Ariel." "Elijah," he said quickly, folding the napkin and suddenly aware of his calloused hands and dust-stained shirt. "Were you drawing?" "Just sketches. Nothing important." "May I?" She reached out. Against his better judgment, he handed it over. She studied the lines with the care of someone examining evidence. "This is beautiful. You're an architect." "Not yet. I work construction. Saving for school." "I know the feeling," she said softly. "I'm saving for law school. Some nights it's just peanut butter sandwiches, so I can set something aside before the acceptance letter comes." Hope flickered between them. He asked what kind of law she wanted to practice. "Housing rights. Labor disputes. Immigration. I want to defend the people the system crushes." "I want to design affordable homes," Elijah said. "Places where families don't just survive, they thrive." Her eyes glowed. "You see hope where others only see obstacles." Outside, Atlanta buzzed with life. Inside, two dreamers connected over napkin sketches and the stubborn belief that work could mean love and action. 3 months of coffee dates and long walks through Piedmont Park led to a choice that would haunt him for years. One sweltering August night, sitting on his fire escape, they shared a bottle of cheap wine while the city blurred through the humidity. "I got in," Ariel whispered, pulling an envelope from her purse. "Emory University School of Law." Elijah's heart faltered. That same week, his own acceptance letter to Georgia Tech sat unopened on his table. "When do classes start?" "September," she said, her voice steady but trembling underneath. "Elijah, I can't afford loans." He had known this moment would come. He looked at her clutching that envelope like a lifeline, her eyes alight with hope. He made the choice that would define a dozen years. "You go first," he said firmly. "I'll hold us down. You graduate, pass the bar, build your career. Then it'll be my turn." She cried and asked if he was certain. "We're a team," he told her. "And teams take turns carrying each other." 3 weeks later, they married at Atlanta's municipal court. Ariel wore a simple sundress from the clearance rack. Elijah put on his interview suit. Judge Harris married them in minutes. No guests, no flowers, just two young souls wagering everything on love. The first year was beautiful in its rough simplicity. Elijah worked 16-hour shifts between Carver Construction and side jobs pouring concrete. Ariel buried herself in books. They lived on ramen and shared second-hand textbooks. Gas station wine marked their victories, and their bigger dreams were whispered into the early morning quiet. But slowly things shifted. Ariel's study groups included classmates with parents who owned firms. Her internship interviews took place in glass towers. She began speaking of professors, judges, and senior partners as if they were gods. Meanwhile, Elijah's hands grew harder, his back more bent. The Georgia Tech letter yellowed in a drawer. By her third year, Ariel stopped introducing him at school events. By the fourth, her wedding ring stayed in her purse during networking dinners. On the night of her graduation, Elijah prepared their small apartment like a shrine to their beginnings. He cooked her favorite pasta, lit candles, placed a single white rose in a glass, plucked from the park because even flowers cost too much. Ariel came home late, almost unrecognizable. Flawless makeup. A designer bag he'd only ever seen behind glass. Diamond earrings that cost more than their rent. In her arms, the white blazer he had saved for her interviews now hung lifeless. "Sit down, Elijah," she said. He stayed standing, spatula in hand. "Let's divorce." She slid the papers beside the meal he had spent 3 hours preparing. "I've already signed." "What?" His voice cracked. "I've outgrown this." She gestured at their tiny apartment. "We're not equals anymore. Our lives are different now. You're not presentable. I didn't see it until I learned what success really looks like." Outside, a black Mercedes waited at the curb. Behind the wheel sat Darius Bennett, 44, senior partner, gold watch, a man whose gaze opened doors. He had been mentoring Ariel late into the nights. "Don't contest this," she warned. "Darius's firm handles divorces too." The door closed with a soft click that sounded like a gunshot. Elijah never touched the pasta. He packed it up, left it on the counter like a monument to misplaced love, and sat in the silence. No shouting. No tears. Just an emptiness heavy enough to smother a life. Before dawn he filled a duffel, left his wedding ring on the nightstand, and moved into a cramped garage apartment offered by Reggie Brooks behind his auto shop. No lease. No questions. Just a workshop, tools, and the silence that follows after betrayal has carved you empty. Elijah disappeared. He wiped his social accounts, changed his phone, and withdrew from Georgia Tech before tuition hit. His acceptance letter went up in flames behind Reggie's shop, and with it, he laid his ambitions to rest without ceremony. He worked relentlessly. When his shift ended, he pored over drafting guides borrowed from the library, studied building codes under a dim flashlight, and sketched out plans for neighborhoods developers had long overlooked. There were no clients, no funding, no office. Only his conviction that people deserved more than identical apartment blocks. 2 months after the divorce, Ariel became Mrs. Bennett in a quiet courthouse signing. No aisle, no gown, no choir. Just Darius's pen, a clerk's nod, and a sleek car waiting at the curb. What the day lacked in romance, Darius made up for with presence. A senior partner, well connected in government and boardrooms alike, he could move mountains with introductions. Ariel believed she had leapt across a divide Elijah could never bridge. She left behind the cramped apartment where ramen marked special occasions, and moved into a glass tower overlooking Peachtree Street. Her closet transformed. Milan blazers, heels that spoke before she did, jewelry that announced her worth. Colleagues who once forgot her name now introduced her as Mrs. Bennett. Sharp, ambitious, bound for partnership. Darius opened doors that launched her into multi-million-dollar cases few first-year associates even glimpsed. Study groups gave way to galas. Champagne replaced cheap wine. Chauffeurs replaced late-night buses. To the world, Ariel was rising. She didn't see the scaffolding beneath it. Every handshake began with Darius. Every case bore his fingerprints. She told herself she had earned it, that Elijah could never have lifted her this high. But in the quiet, truth pressed in like a bruise, she had traded independence for ownership. While Ariel drank beneath chandeliers, Elijah slept on an air mattress behind Reggie's shop. The air thick with motor oil and cicadas. A duffel bag served as his dresser. His sketchbook his only inheritance from the man he still wanted to become. His first break came from Mrs. Jenkins, a widow whose congregation dreamed of turning a burned lot into duplexes. She heard whispers Elijah drew like an architect, but charged like a handyman. At her kitchen table he sketched porches where neighbors could share dusk, and windows that caught afternoon light. She trusted him. Volunteers followed his guidance with hammers in hand. By winter, families moved into homes that restored dignity as much as shelter. No plaques, no press, just collard greens and cornbread at a thank-you dinner that filled him more than champagne ever could. With a small community grant, he registered Carter Build and Design and rented a single room above a Caribbean bakery. He slept among blueprint rolls, paying rent with sweat. When deadlines tightened, he dozed in steel-toe boots, rising before dawn to return calls before clients realized how thin his staff was. His projects were small, daycare remodels, church expansions, but each one earned trust. Pastors shared his number. Nonprofits passed his sketches hand to hand. Neighborhood groups introduced him as the man who listened. By the time Ariel and Darius toasted their 4th anniversary in Martha's Vineyard, Elijah cut the ribbon on a 10-unit affordable housing complex backed by a coalition of churches. She lifted flutes beneath chandeliers. He raised walls under floodlights. Neither knew of the other's milestones. But the tide was already shifting. Darius's empire, bloated and unchecked, had nearly peaked. Elijah's slow climb was laying a foundation no scandal could topple. On a youth shelter project, Elijah met Simone Ellis. She wasn't dazzling, she was steady, a social worker with rolled sleeves and a clipboard under her arm. She coaxed teens into lifting boxes, kept them laughing. When Elijah showed her his dorm sketches, she asked about safety, sunlight, and whether the space could help a child feel less forgotten. Where Ariel once measured him by prestige, Simone measured him by sincerity. His heart noticed. 5 years after his divorce, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution profiled him. The builder with a heart, Elijah Carter, and the future of affordable housing. The photos showed him smiling with families at ribbon cuttings, mud on his boots instead of polished shoes. The article highlighted his beginnings, his ethic, and his belief that architecture carried moral weight. Elijah and Simone married beneath oak trees in Piedmont Park. No grandeur, just friends, co-workers, and families whose homes he had built. Laughter and tears braided into something durable and quiet. A year later, their son Micah was born. His cries filling the modest home Elijah had renovated himself. Fatherhood steadied him further. He built not just for dignity anymore, but for legacy. Meanwhile, Ariel's world began to crack. Darius had always blurred lines, brushing off concerns with lines like, "Compliance is just a game, we play it better." He slid papers across her desk. Offshore trusts, layered acquisitions she barely understood. His reassurances soothed without clarifying. "It's standard. Don't slow down. Regulators can't keep up." At first, she ignored the knot in her stomach. Every signature brought another deal, another toast, another article hailing the firm's meteoric rise. She told herself she was learning from a master. That boldness would set her apart. But whispers spread. Auditors noted discrepancies. Analysts tracked funds through strange channels. Rival firms hinted at corruption. Ariel drowned her doubts in work, dinners, and the relentless need to remain indispensable. Elijah's name, meanwhile, wove quietly through the city like mortar, holding things together without show. He spoke at neighborhood meetings and universities, pressed city council for responsible development, and mentored interns raised in the same streets he now redesigned. Carter Build and Design grew into an office of glass catching morning sun. Staffed as diversely as Atlanta itself, with a portfolio blending efficiency and heart. His projects opened without fanfare, but residents told the story. A grandmother wept on her first porch. Children grew in courtyards he insisted remain for play. Then the storm broke. The SEC launched an investigation into Darius Bennett and partners. Money laundering, fraudulent acquisitions, misuse of client funds. Documents surfaced revealing a maze of shell corporations. And in the margins, Ariel's signature, dozens of times. The fallout was swift. She was escorted from the firm, access cut off, her name scrubbed from the website. Reporters camped outside her building. The bar opened disciplinary proceedings. Every question carried the same brutal assumption. She had either known and participated, or refused to know, which was just as damning. And Darius disappeared before the first subpoenas arrived. Accounts were drained, assets sold off, and a private jet was tracked to the U.S. Virgin Islands. Ariel was stranded with frozen funds, unpaid bills, and attorneys demanding fees she couldn't afford. The diamond jewelry went to pawnshops. The luxury heels were sold on consignment. The condo was surrendered. Before the review board, she pleaded that she had trusted her husband, believed his promises, never intended to deceive anyone. The judgment was merciless. Negligence meant complicity. Her law license was revoked indefinitely. She moved into a spare room at a friend's place in East Point. When that fell apart, she rented a studio above a laundromat, lulled and tormented by the machines humming through the night. From ballroom galas to folding chairs. From champagne towers to coin-operated washers. From power lunches to nameless online gigs editing briefs for paralegals who never learned her name. Meanwhile, Elijah's star rose. He broke ground on Riverside Commons, a 40-unit housing project in southwest Atlanta funded by nonprofits and city grants. Families lined up to thank him. Children tugged at his sleeves. Volunteers praised his vision. He brushed aside the praise and kept working. Ariel saw his name everywhere, magazines, local TV city meetings. In every photo he looked taller. Not because he had changed, but because he now stood free of anyone's shadow. One gray, rain-soaked morning, Ariel appeared at the chain-link gate of Riverside Commons, drenched but unyielding. Andre, Elijah's foreman, jogged to the site trailer. "Boss, there's something at the gate." "What kind of something?" Elijah asked, glancing up from blueprints. "The kind that comes with history." Elijah walked to the entrance. Ariel stood there like a ghost, hair plastered to her face, her once expensive coat frayed at the sleeves. At 35, she looked older, hollowed out by choices that had consumed her. But her eyes were the same ones that had first found his in a tavern 12 years ago, now burning with desperation. "Hello, Elijah." He stopped 10 feet away, close enough to see her trembling hand, far enough to keep steady. "Elijah, I've read about you, your awards, your features. You always said you'd change the world. I knew you would." Her voice cracked. "What do you want?" His bluntness cut through her. "I made a mistake. The worst mistake of my life." Behind them, the crew pretended not to watch but couldn't look away. "Darius left me," she blurted. "When the investigation started, he vanished to the islands. They froze our assets. I lost my license, my career, everything." Elijah's face didn't flinch. "I'm sorry to hear that. I live above a laundromat. I edit legal documents for $15 an hour. I shop at thrift stores. I eat boxed macaroni. I chose wrong. I picked the man who only looked successful over the one who was actually building something." Elijah looked at the woman who had once broken him, now begging for fragments of the life she'd thrown away. "I don't care that you're married," she whispered, the words that would haunt her forever. "Please, let me be part of your life again. I still love you. I never stopped." For 7 years, Elijah had imagined this moment, the justice, the vindication. But standing there, he only felt weary. "Love," he said. "You didn't love me, Ariel. You loved the stability I gave you. And now you love what I've built." She reached for his arm. He stepped back. "That's not true," she pleaded. "I know I hurt you, but we had something real. We can have it again." "We did have something real," Elijah answered. "And you traded it for diamond earrings and a Mercedes." The site fell silent, rain drumming on scaffolding. "I was young. Reckless," she cried, tears blending with the storm. "I got swept up by a world I thought I wanted. And I learned the hard way. Success without the right person is just expensive loneliness." "You're 7 years too late for that lesson," he said. She sank to her knees in the mud. "I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I ruined us. But what we had was rare. You don't find love like that twice." Elijah crouched, his voice soft but final. "You're right. You don't find it twice. Here's what you missed. I did find it again, with someone who stayed when it was hard, not someone who ran when it got easy." Through the rain, a familiar figure appeared. Simone crossed the site carrying their 1-year-old son Micah, who laughed as raindrops kissed his cheeks. She moved with the ease of someone firmly rooted where she belonged. Micah reached for Elijah, and in an instant the acclaimed architect melted into a father, his face illuminated by his child's joy. Simone took in the scene, her husband's ex-wife kneeling in mud, the watchful workers, the weight of the past. She understood. "Simone, this is Ariel," Elijah said, holding Micah. "Ariel, my wife Simone, and our son Micah." Ariel looked up at the woman now holding the life she had lost. Simone was beautiful, not from pretense, but from confidence and peace, secure in her choices, certain of her love. "Hello, Ariel," Simone said gently, kind but not naive. "I've heard your story. I'm sorry for what you've gone through." That compassion shattered something final inside Ariel. Elijah adjusted Micah and spoke quietly. "You left me when I was laying the foundation. Now you want to live in the house." He glanced at Simone, who smiled knowingly, as if to say, "I already have the version of you she never waited for. The version that doesn't need polishing to be worthy." Ariel rose, her dignity soaked with the rain. "Do you ever wonder what we could have been?" Elijah regarded her carefully, as though the question itself deserved respect. "Every day," he admitted. "And every day, I'm grateful it ended. Otherwise, I might never have learned the difference between someone who loves your potential and someone who loves your heart." He took Simone's hand, and together they turned away. Husband, wife, and child, walking forward. Ariel stood alone in the rain, finally comprehending the cost of her choices. She had traded a man willing to move mountains for her, for one who only moved money for himself. She had sacrificed forever for a fleeting moment, chosen status over substance. Elijah had once been hers entirely. Now he belonged to a woman who would never ask him to choose between his dreams and her love. Ariel pulled out her phone and deleted his number. Some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. Some chances, once wasted, never return. The rain kept falling as she walked to the bus stop, carrying nothing but the weight of her loss, and the knowledge it was hers alone. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell, so you never miss a powerful story drop.